people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. Reacting to Alicia Baumgardner's big announcement yesterday that she has signed 2 most valuable promotions, Red Corner Boxing stated, "Let's see her at 135 versus Carolyn Dubois, a real test." Carolyn Dubois takes her apart, in my opinion, to which Carolyn responded, "Now this is something I believe we would all like to see, but I believe Jake Paul is the guy that can make it happen."
But why should he?
So the same Carolyn Dubois, who thought she was ready for Katie Taylor and now thinks she's ready for Alicia Baumgardner, doesn't think she's ready for Beatrice Ferreira? Oh, I haven't forgotten. I'm not letting it go because it's cowardly.
It shows her character, or the lack thereof, that you've got energy for Katie, you've got energy for Alicia, even Terry, even Rhiannon. But when Beatrice is brought up, you want to put up all sorts of roadblocks and obstacles.
That's a unification match that's right there waiting for you. When Katie Taylor still had the belts at 135, Carolyn Dubois was the one who stated that Katie was holding them hostage. Well, now Beatrice has one, and you don't seem to want to take it from her. But you've got energy for Alicia Baumgardner, though.
If they made the fight, of course I would watch it, but I'm left wondering, what the hell has Carolyn done to earn it?
What, because you've got a belt? Terry Harper has a belt. Stephanie Hahn has a belt. Who the hell do you think you are? You think you're too good for Beatrice Ferreira, and you want to be fast-tracked to all the big fights without paying your dues, because you haven't paid them. Not by coasting and not by pouncing on girls everybody knows you can beat.
So the moment that a formidable fighter is brought up, you start coming up with all sorts of obstacles and excuses and reasons not to unify.
I've heard it said in some circles that women's boxing sort of lost some of its momentum the last year and a half or so, and that Katie Taylor was actually the driving force behind the renaissance, behind the surge. But without her, the momentum is not quite the same. And then I look over at Carolyn, who's being a very picky eater.
Spoiled brat.
And I kind of see what people mean and what they're talking about, that a big part of the appeal that women's boxing has had is that the good fights, the really good ones, aren't that difficult to make, where she's making it difficult to make the Ferreira fight. You've got a belt, so does she. What's the problem? You've got a hankering for Terry Harper's belt, and you had a hankering for Rhiannon's before that, but when it comes to this fighter, you don't keep the same energy. And if you are the heir apparent to the throne,
You're supposed to be.
then the sport's not going to get very far, because you don't want to do what you need to do. You don't want to follow in the footsteps of Katie Taylor. You want the red carpet rolled out for you. You want to be fast-tracked to major fights, major bouts.
Who do you think you are?
You want to hold off on unifying titles at your own weight so that you could be fast-tracked to a fight with Alicia. What have you done to earn a fight with Alicia? I wouldn't be mad at all if Alicia looked at Carolyn the same way Carolyn looks at Beatrice.
What the hell's your problem?
Because she's spoiled. You're coming into an environment where the hard work's already been done so that a fighter like you can fight on a major platform and make decent money.
While you were taking shots at Eddie Hearn, who, if not for Eddie and his investment in Katie and all the work they did, a fighter like you don't get to fight on Sky.
But you were taking shots at him and you were taking shots at her, pretending that they didn't lay the foundations that a fighter like you is now benefiting from. Avoiding the tough challenges at your own weight, a Katie Taylor, you are not.
I think she's a coward.
Because what she wanted was to run through the lightweight division, bullying girls that don't have the same amateur background that she does, so that when one moves into the weight class, you got all these goddamn excuses.
Well, she doesn't take her cues from Katie Taylor. That's not her idol and that's not her mentor. Clarissa Shields is.
No surprises there. But even Clarissa wouldn't shy away from a challenge if there were one available.
Yeah, Clarissa don't duck no smoke like Carolyn.
I don't like the way she carries herself. I don't like her holier-than-thou attitude. I don't like her pretend ballsiness.
Hey, you got a lot of energy for a Rhiannon Dixon and a Terry Harper.
And now you think you're supposed to get a major payday via an Alicia Baumgardner fight before you've shared the ring with a Beatrice Ferreira.
Get over yourself.
Like I said, I wouldn't be mad at all if Alicia looked at Carolyn how Carolyn looks at Beatrice. What's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Two can play that game, and just the act of having a belt at lightweight,
That doesn't make you a worthier candidate than anybody else.
you want to be a standout? You want to be the best in show? Go fight Beatrice, because until you do, you're just another belt holder.
I don't know, man. I mean, I don't know the talk with Inoue is. I guess because it's an easy fight to make, low hanging fruit or whatever. I don't know.
Two big names.
But,
I mean,
but really, I mean, I don't even think Ball beats like an Angelo Leo either. You know what I mean? We're going to talk about the featherweight division as a whole. I mean, why does Ball get mentioned with Inoue and not the other guys? You know, it's like even Cardenas was at 122. You know, Cardenas skill wise probably better than Ball, and Cardenas can fight at a decent pace himself if it really comes to it. Ball is fun. He's always going to be fun. Whether he wins or loses, he's going to be fun. But against Inoue, if everybody keeps talking about the Inoue fight, like that's the one we're gonna look for. To me, that's not really an exciting fight. I don't think he goes 3-4 rounds with Inoue because he's tailor made for a guy like Inoue, and Inoue pulls the trigger fast if you try to come into without deception.
Paulie Malinaji asks, why Nick Ball and not somebody else? I think it's because Nick has made not one but two appearances in those big Saudi shows, and now Inoue means to work with Turkey to be on one of those shows himself. I think that's a part of how their names got attached. And, you know, Nick Ball has been in there with more featherweight champions than the other guys.
I felt like Paulie was selling Nick Ball short.
Not because of how great he is, per se, but what's supposed to make the other guys better? What's supposed to make Angelo Leo better? He got beat by Stephen Fulton, and Stephen Fulton, he already got beat by Naoya Inoue.
Those three are interchangeable as far as I'm concerned. That if Inoue were to move up and take on one of the champions, one is just as good as the other.
And Rafael Espinoza?
Well, I view him as being a lot more dangerous than the other three champions at the weight. I would give Rafael Espinoza very good odds to beat any one of them. And due to his sheer size, that's what makes him a dangerous fight for Inoue, though down the line, that could backfire.
Being 6'1" or 6'2" or whatever it is, at 126, almost immediately you're on borrowed time. How much longer will Rafael be able to keep making that weight?
Back over to Nick. I think Paulie's selling him a bit short because Nick is what he is. With Nick Ball, what you see is what you get. He's a pressure guy, not a fence and fiddle fighter, not a cerebral fighter per se, but you don't always need a cerebral fighter.
You don't always need to be one. I mean, Pablo Cano was not a fence and fiddle fighter, not a cerebral fighter, but he completely wore out Jorge Linares when Jorge moved up from 135 up to 140. Sometimes it's that fighter that's not going to respect you or your resume.
I remember that fight.
Sometimes it's just the act of being that brute that presents the challenge for the smaller fighter that's moving up in weight. That's how it was when Linares fought Cano, and you saw what Cano did to him.
In spite of Jorge being a three-weight champion, in spite of his resume and all of his accolades, it didn't matter.
So could that be the case when it comes to Inoue and Nick Ball? It's a possibility. It's either Nick Ball's aggression will be too much, too often for the smaller fighter moving up in weight in Inoue, or Inoue will be able to catch him like he catches everybody else. But I see what the challenge is. Nick Ball's not going to give you time to think, time to breathe. He's going to be all over you like a cheap suit. And you need to be physically adept to the task. You need to be quick enough and strong enough to respond to keep him out. Otherwise, he's going to ragdoll you. He's going to wear you out.
We're not on the eve of that fight anyway. Inoue doesn't look to be moving up to the featherweight division anytime in the foreseeable future. He's got business to tend to at Super Bantam before he moves up to feather.
He's got the Vegas fight in May. Then I think they said they want to take on MJ Akhmadaliev in September. Then in December, he'll make his Saudi debut.
Turkey says he wants to put him in there with Junto. We'll see if he does.
But just addressing that potentiality, Nick Ball would be just as good a choice for Inoue as any one of the other guys. Hell, he's been in there with more featherweight champions than the other guys. He's been in there with Ray Vargas, he's been in there with Ray Savage.
Stephen Fulton only became a featherweight champion by beating a guy that he beat already, and Angelo Leo, he got beat by Stephen Fulton.
So I wouldn't be too hard on Nick. He's got his limitations, but so do they. In men's super middleweight news, as it pertains to the proposed Christian Mbilli versus Diego Pacheco fight, negotiations are now at an impasse over the date and location. The proposed interim WBC Super Middleweight Championship between Christian Mbilli and Diego Pacheco have reportedly reached an impasse over the date and location, according to Eye of the Tiger boss Camille Estefan, who says they want the fight for June in California. We want it for May 17th in Quebec City. If within 3 or 4 days we've not reached an agreement, we will ask the World Boxing Council to launch a purse bid.
That's not all. According to veteran boxing scribe Carlos Linares, the backup plan, if things don't work out with Christian Mbilli, is a Trevor McCumbee fight.
MAGA McCumbee.
Seems to be an avenue they are exploring for Diego Pacheco's next fight for some time in June, late June, June 21st.
Now, of course, I think the Christian Mbilli fight is the better fight of the two, but just because the WBC orders a purse bid doesn't mean that Diego is going to go along with it, because he's already ranked at number 1 via the WBO. Could go the WBO route. This is all over home field advantage. That's what it is. Christian wants home field advantage in Quebec, and it would appear that Diego Pacheco wants home field advantage here stateside.
This would be the second consecutive fight that would have fallen apart for Christian Mbilli. Initially, he was supposed to be fighting Kevin Lele Sajo in France.
That was via the IBF. This proposed fight with Diego would have been via the WBC. I don't get the sense that it's going to materialize. If it did, I liked Diego's chances.
I think he's strong enough to hurt Christian Mbilli. I think he packs a big enough punch that he could take him out, though it would take some doing.
Wouldn't be easy. Christian Mbilli is a close quarters fighter, a pressure fighter, whereas Diego Pacheco, the more statuesque fighter of the two, requires a lot more room to work because he's got those long arms. And in a crawl space with a pressure guy, a volume guy, it's that much harder to get the punches out if he keeps crowding you and smothering you, and that's what Christian Mbilli would try to do. So it's a question of who's going to get to fight their fight, Christian or Diego. I happen to think Diego manages the distance well enough that he could catch Christian with something hard on the way in. It could be rough and tumble for him up until that happens, but I do think it would happen if they fought. It's not looking like they're going to, though. I was never confident.
It's a great fight, don't get me wrong, but I was never sold this was going to be their next fight.
Now what Camille Estefan wants to do is petition the World Boxing Council to order a purse bid, but even in doing so, that doesn't guarantee that Diego won't go his own way and do his own thing. He might, and if he does, Christian Mbilli will be left to contend with whoever their next highest ranked contender is. Via the World Boxing Council's ranked standings, Christian is at number 1. Diego is at number 2. If Diego goes his own way, Ozly Iglesias is ranked at number 3. Luka Plentic is ranked at number 4. Jaime Munguia is ranked at number 5. And Edgar Berlanga is ranked at number 6.
Poland's own Maciej Suliecki is ranked at number 7. Of those aforementioned names, I could see Christian end up fighting either Luka Plentic or Maciej Suliecki.
More than the others. Jaime Munguia is spoken for. He's going to be fighting Bruno Sarace for the second time in May. Edgar Berlanga, he just fought.
He's a free agent now.
I think it's likelier that Christian Mbilli would end up fighting either Luka Plentic or Maciej Suliecki.
That's how it's looking.
It's just unfortunate that Mbilli versus Pacheco could not materialize, but they are both vying for home field advantage, and want doesn't always get. Elsewhere in the super middleweight division, Puerto Rico's own Edgar Berlanga took to his social media to marvel at his free agency, saying, "Damn, I'm really a free agent." Rumor has it that Edgar may be leaving Matchroom for MVP, just like Alicia Baumgardner did, which would be a good move. Though whether he's at Matchroom or Most Valuable Promotions, the mission remains the same. When Matchroom picked this guy up after he separated from Top Rank, the goal was to keep him an unbeaten fighter long enough that he can make it to a Canelo Alvarez fight.
And they did that. They delivered on that promise. But now that the Canelo fight has come and gone,
To continue to make good money, very good money, you have to fight the rest of the guys in a division. You have to fight the Caleb Plants. You have to fight the Jaime Munguias, the Jermall Charlos, if you can lure him out of his quasi-retirement. You have to fight these kinds of fighters. You don't get to keep fighting the Jason Quigleys and Padraig McCrarys of the world.
the Jonathan Ortizes of the world.
So whatever money Matchroom was pouring down the drain in Edgar Berlanga was likely recouped in the Canelo Alvarez fight.
To some extent.
Most valuable promotions, if they decide to pick this fighter up, has to be of a similar mindset. Otherwise, you're just burning money. That if what Edgar wants to do is cross over to your side of the street so that he can stay on Easy Street,
There has to be an end game.
it has to be built up for something. Say, a Caleb Plant showdown, or a Jaime Munguia showdown. A big fight that will allow you to recoup the money you invest if he does end up in more filler fights and more fights like the Jonathan Ortiz fight.
There has to be an end game.
A goal. I think the biggest fight for Edgar right now is the Jaime Munguia fight, should Jaime end up beating Bruno Sarace, and I think he's going to. I think he's going to knock him out in May and avenge the loss, and if he does, that becomes the biggest fight for Edgar Berlanga. Puerto Rico versus Mexico.
You can sell it.
That's the biggest fight. The second biggest fight, I'd say, is a Caleb Plant fight. I don't really know what Caleb is doing right now. I heard a rumor that he may be returning in May, and we'll see if that rumor checks out. Who against? I don't know.
Theoretically, if Edgar does end up going to Most Valuable Promotions and ends up boxing on the Netflix platform henceforth, there's more than enough money behind him to make any one of those fights happen. And I'm sure that either of those fighters would be willing to cross the street for the money that a Netflix provides.
You could definitely bill Berlanga versus Munguia as a pay-per-view, and I think it would do fairly well. The Caleb Plant fight, not so much.
Caleb is a good fighter, and that's a very good fight, but Caleb doesn't have a country behind him like Jaime would.
I think about the structure of the Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson card, how big that fight was and how many people got to see it because it wasn't a pay-per-view, and I wonder that won't carry over to what other fights might land on Netflix, because if it does, that could be very big for boxing.
And big for Berlanga.
You could definitely bill Berlanga versus Munguia as a pay-per-view. That one you could, but the fight would be even bigger and seen by more people if it's not behind a paywall. If they do that one, how they did Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul.
Netflix seems interested in broadcasting live sport.
What makes them a game changer in the industry is they're about as big as a terrestrial network, about as big as a Fox, an NBC.
300 million plus subscribers all around the world. Everybody's got Netflix.
So that if Netflix makes a boxing match available to all of their existing subscribers, they have about the same reach as a terrestrial network, which amplifies the profile of the fight and the profile of boxing in America.
And that's just something to think about as we entertain the possibility that Edgar might go to MVP and his fights might be on Netflix moving forward. That could be big.
But it's got to be against the somebodies. It's got to be against Munguia. It's got to be against Plant.
You can't just pour money down the drain without some kind of an end game, some kind of a goal.